Thank you for tuning in, listeners. Good morning. Before we get started, please be sure to hit the like button on this video, the notification bell so that you know when I upload new videos. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It does let YouTube know that I'm here. And without further ado, we are going to continue on in Confessions of a Video Vixen. Chapter 14, Miami Advice. After suffering from the drug-induced seizures, I spent the next few days in bed at a friend's house. For about 3 days, I was high and my speech remained slurred and incomprehensible. I began to reach out to people who I believed could help me. I wanted to talk to someone who would take the time and care enough to help me get better. Everyone I called, however, seemed to be too busy to talk. Everyone had their own lives, and it looked as if I had to fend for myself. I wasn't allowed to stay where I was for too long and found myself back on the streets with my son. But by this time, Papa had sent me enough money to buy a car so I would no longer have to rent one. Once again, I found myself sleeping in my car and at the homes of various acquaintances throughout Los Angeles. In a strange twist of fate, I found help in a basketball icon and businessman, Magic Johnson. We were introduced by a woman I met who was a personal assistant to Lorenz Tate during the filming of A Man Apart. She also happened to be the sister of one of Def Jam executive who allowed me to sleep at the Def Jam offices after closing time. After I explained my story to her, she felt compelled to tell Magic, who was then her boss, about me and my son. He met with us immediately and saw to it that my son and I slept in a hotel that night. Over the next few months, Magic, his friends, and staff would be my greatest supporters. Throughout November and December of 2001, he saw to it that my son and I were comfortable, safe, and able to celebrate the holidays. Magic paid for us to stay at the extended stay hotel in Woodland Hills and made sure that there was a Christmas tree with presents under it for my son. Sometimes he arranged for a sitter in order for me to enjoy concerts and parties. Magic allowed me the luxury of relaxation at times, for which I will always be grateful. Yet he was not willing to help me change my life. In fact, I came to realize that a life change for the better was no one's responsibility but my own. I had been through so much over the past 8 months of sleeping wherever I could that when Exhibit called me a few days before Christmas to invite me to Miami for New Year's, I was ecstatic. Exhibit and I had met on December 27, 2000, the same day I was first introduced to Dr. Dre at the filming of the Forget About Dre video. During these 2 years, Exhibit and I shared an on and off intimate relationship. I found him funny and smart, and he always seemed to be extremely grounded, more so than the others. I considered him a friend because he was one of the few people in my life who never treated me any differently, despite what he had may have heard about me. Our relationship had been kept private, and only those closest to him knew of our connection. Like many, if not all the men in my life, I love Exhibit and enjoyed every moment we spent together. We arrived in Miami on December 29th. When most of the country was freezing, Miami was a balmy 80 degrees. We went to the Turnberry Resort, about a half hour from Miami Beach. Our suite overlooked the golf course and lake filled with white swans. We were to stay there for the next 2 weeks at the expense of Loud Records, Exhibit's label. We checked into our luxurious suite and began what would be the vacation of a lifetime for me, for many more reasons than just relaxation and fun. We dined at the most elegant restaurants, enjoying the finest of foods, wines, and desserts. We took trips to the mall and made late-night runs to the beach for pressed Cuban sandwiches. We were in paradise, but there was one reason in particular for the trip, and that was to attend Diddy's pre-New Year's Eve party at his home in New Year's and his New Year's Eve bash at the Shore Club. Diddy had no idea I would be coming, and I hadn't seen him since earlier that year. I had not told Exhibit that Diddy and I knew each other for fear that he would decide not to take me. I was looking forward to seeing Diddy again, and especially to what I knew would be the look on his face when he saw me. Finally, the moment arrived, and Exhibit and I stepped into Diddy's home. I looked around for a moment and saw a lot of people who I knew, yet I was only concerned with the host. Just as I was scanning the room for Diddy appeared in front of us. All of his attention was on Exhibit as he greeted him, thanking him for coming. As he moved down the line, his eyes fixed on my face and his jaw dropped. Diddy saw his hellos and gave me a generous hug, then grabbed me by the hand and pulled me out to the front lawn. Diddy asked uneasily, "We're cool, right? I mean, we're friends, right?" I was confused by the line of questioning, but assured him we were in fact cool. He continued, "I'm saying though, you know I have kids and a mother and people who love me, and I can't afford for anything to get out. I don't want them to be upset." I was still very confused, but reassured him that I was in no way tried to harm him, and especially not his family and loved ones. We went back into the house and met back up with Exhibit. The look on Exhibit's face was asking what's going on, and all I could do was shrug my shoulders. I had no idea. I went along to mingle with the rest of the attendees and say hello to people I knew. Diddy and Exhibit disappeared upstairs, and at Diddy's request, leaving me baffled. About 45 minutes later, Exhibit came down the stairs, grabbed me by my forearm, dragging me out to the front lawn. His eyes were wide and his mouth open. "What did you do to that man?" he asked me. Sorry, y'all, I'm talking my throat dry. Hold on. I was even more confused than ever. Exhibit went on to describe the conversation he had had with Diddy. Diddy warned Exhibit to be careful around me and to not let me near his home. Diddy even confided that he was in the process of buying the home we were in, but now that I had been there, he would not go through with the purchase. Then he said something even stranger. Exhibit told me that Diddy said she'll have you on video with fingers in your booty. By this point, Exhibit was just as confused as me. We stood on the front lawn laughing hysterically, and Diddy appeared to be under the influence, but underneath the laughter there was a serious thought running through my head. Why was Diddy this anxious around me? I remained baffled and threw the thought into the back of my mind as Exhibit and I rejoined the party. There was fabulous food and drink and plenty of other stimulation. We were all having such a good time with the exception of Farnsworth, who appeared to have gotten on Diddy's bad side that evening. We partied until the early morning and were expecting it all to come to an end when Diddy summoned Exhibit and me to join him in heading to a local nightclub. The three of us jumped into his black-on-black SUV, which was a small part of his larger convoy of similar vehicles. After a short ride, we arrived at the nightclub. I don't remember the name of the club, but I do remember what it was like inside. At first, we all sat in the VIP area and cracked open a few bottles of champagne and made a toast to the new year. It felt good to be out with Exhibit and even with Diddy. We were all happy and living in the moment. All of the troubles which awaited me back in Los Angeles were just that, back in Los Angeles. The club was full of energy. The music was loud. The dance floor was packed. There were several men who were shirtless, and a few women who were there were also wearing very little. Exhibit went crazy when we got on the dance floor. Not one for dancing, I stood on the sidelines and watched him. He was happy, so free, and enjoying his blessed life. I couldn't help but feel a little sad as the alcohol began to wear off. I wanted this moment to last forever. The laughing, the sips of premium champagne, the loud music, and carefree feelings. As I stood and watched Exhibit dance and jump around, greeting the fans who reached out to him, I noticed that the majority of the men around us were gay. There were a few gay couples scattered around the club, kissing and carrying on in the dark corners. There were others dancing together on the dance floor, bumping and grinding. I flagged down Exhibit to share my revelation with him. I asked him, "Look around. Do you notice anything strange about this place?" He stopped dancing and took a second to look around the room. Soon enough, it hit him. This shit looks like a gay club. I responded with a grin and a nod. This was Miami after all. My grin soon turned into a roaring laughter as Exhibit stood there in disbelief. "Did this motherfucker just bring us to a gay club?" he asked, laughing and laying aside for a moment the usual macho mantle that cloaks most rappers. Again, I responded with a loud roar of laughter. We finished the night at the club and soon made our way back to the Turnberry Resort. It was a night to remember, and we stayed up until about 9 in the morning, making love and laughing about the night we had out with Diddy. But it wasn't over yet. The next night would be Diddy's big New Year's Eve bash at the Shore Club. It was the first time I had ever seen X dressed formally, and he looked so handsome. I wore a black strapless dress with a fish fin bottom. We were then chauffeured to the event and arrived in style and right on time. I found myself walking tall next to him on the receiving carpet. My back straightened even more as I noticed the young women Diddy had hired to stand on pedestals on either side of the entrance, dressed like angels. The party started in a large reception area and spilled out to the Olympic-sized pool. There were stilt walkers, fireworkers, and synchronized swimmers. It was a magical night, and people came from all over the country to celebrate New Year with Diddy. There were free-flowing champagne and food for everyone. Exhibit and I drank, ate, and danced the night away. As usual, we were separated for a while and mingled on our own, then catch up with each other to report what we saw and who we spoke to. The night was filled with endless laughter and euphoria. By this time, I had not used drugs since my seizures 2 months earlier, and even though most everyone around me indulged in ecstasy, I stayed away. I did indulge and maybe even overindulge in the readily available champagne and liquor. By the end of the party, Exhibit and I were eager to get back to our suite and dive into each other. That's exactly what we did, and for the next week and a half, we were so into each other. I wanted it to continue once we returned to Los Angeles. What felt like months away in a typical paradise quickly came to an end, however. On the last day of the vacation, January 3rd, 2002, I slowly packed my bags while holding back the tears. I had no stability to go back to and longed for a way to start over again. Exhibit and I sat across from each other in the living room of the suite. I watched him roll a blunt with precision and care so as not to damage the delicate tobacco leaves or to spill the last of his weed. He began to go over the events of the last 2 weeks, recounting all the fun we had in Miami. Then he talked about the year that had just passed and all he expected out of 2002. X had great plans and ideas for his life, and as we discussed his business goals and the money he would make and save, he had a 5-year plan which laid out how his career would be built and its effects on his family, especially his young son, who he raises as a single dad. He had it all together, and the gleam in his eyes showed his enthusiasm and hopes for the future. As he came to the end of describing his 5-year plan, he looked up from his blunt and asked me, "So what's your plans?" Sadly enough, I had no answer because there wasn't a plan. All of my belongings were in storage and in the back of my car. I had nowhere to live and didn't have enough money to start over. As I sat there terrified watching him smoke his blunt, I fought back the biggest cry of my life. The flight back was long for me as I sat up in my first class seat while X napped the whole way. My mind was racing, trying to figure out what would I do when we touched down in Los Angeles. The party was over, and I was the only one with nothing to do and nowhere to go. We pulled up to Exhibit's house, and I packed all of my things into the back seat of my car, gave him a long, deep hug, and said goodbye. He had to do a lot and was eager to get back to his life. Though I was longing to stay with him, it was back to the extended stay hotel for me. Once I arrived there, I placed a postcard of the Turnberry Resort on the mirror next to a picture of my son with Santa Claus, which had been taken a few weeks before. I missed Miami as if it were my home, and I missed my son, wishing I could give him a home. My life was a mess. Thank you for tuning in and listening to me read Confessions of a Video Vixen by Corinne Steffens. We are nearing the end of the book. And so I've already begun uploading Vixen Diaries. So please be sure to head over to that playlist and start on that. Thank you so much. And till next time.